Debra has been part of and led expeditions, global expeditions all over the world. She's won medals at the World Championships. She's launched 5 different companies. She's a published author. She's presented, I'm told, more than 400 BBC TV shows. And of course, she's been awarded an MBE. If you could, I would ask you to give a very warm round of applause, but we'll do it virtually. Please welcome and listen now to Debra Searle, ladies and gentlemen.
My name is Debra Searle, and I once spent 3.5 months completely alone in a small wooden rowing boat, rowing across the Atlantic Ocean. So I guess I've taken social distancing to a bit of an extreme. Today, I'd like to share just a little bit of that story with a few images and videos. I suppose, just to paint a picture, not in any way to brag, although I am really proud I managed to do this alone, but more in the hope that it will really demonstrate how possible it is not just to survive, but thrive when we're faced with a challenging situation, and to share 2 of the tools that I relied on to stay mentally resilient in what was actually quite a horrendous situation that I absolutely never would have chosen. And so let me start by just sharing this short video.
Our latest sporting heroine is a woman who has rowed her way across the Atlantic and has been talking to the 6 o'clock news about her remarkable but terrifying adventure.
It's taken Debra 3.5 months to row from Tenerife to Barbados. She started her journey with her husband, but continued on her own when he pulled out after only 2 weeks.
She continued alone.
So obviously the plan wasn't to spend 3.5 months in isolation. We'd entered a 3,300-mile Atlantic rowing race, and the only difference between our boat and all these others you can see here is that we were the only mixed-sex team taking part. They were all double-handed men's teams. But I was convinced I'd picked quite a good partner in Andrew, and that he's 6'5". He'd rowed for Great Britain, which seemed particularly important to offset the fact that I'd never even rowed before. But after 4 years of planning and building this boat, which arrived in a box looking like an IKEA wardrobe, we set off on what we hoped would be the adventure of a lifetime. Unfortunately, on the first night out there, we discovered that Andrew suffers from what's like a really crippling phobia of open ocean, which obviously is a pretty unfortunate time to discover this. At first, I guess we'd been really convinced that we would find a solution. But after about a week, he started slipping in and out of consciousness because he was having a lot of panic attacks that were preventing him from eating and sleeping. And so I knew the only option was to get a rescue boat to come out to help us. But that left me with this massive decision. You know, do I get onto this rescue boat and go home with him, or do I stay out here on my own and try and finish it for both of us? But the reality was I was absolutely loving it out there. So I chose to go on alone and started what ended up being a very long, slow journey across the Atlantic Ocean. Alone, I guess I'd never really anticipated how long I would be alone. With Andrew on board, it was supposed to take us 6 weeks, but it ended up taking me 3.5 months. And my living spaces were literally this coffin-shaped cabin that wasn't even tall enough to sit up in. And the conditions were tough. You know, I had 2 hurricanes while I was out there. So I was facing some days what they looked like apartment-sized waves racing towards you. And then I had this constant threat that I felt all the time of the marine life. I was convinced that they were going to come munching through the side of the boat and eat me, because that's what they do in the movies, isn't it? Which is pretty much what I based my knowledge on at that time. So how did I stay resilient? Well, I had a whole mindset toolkit that I relied on. It became a really significant part of my journey, and it's still a really significant part of my journey now as I try and grow my businesses, and, you know, at the moment juggling trying to homeschool my kids as well. And I haven't got time to share them all with you, but I'd love to share 2 with you today that for me became crucial and are still really crucial now. And in general, they came about out of near disaster. Often they were things that came out of desperation because I wanted to live. And so this first one actually came about when I'd nearly been run over by a big container ship, because it turns out they don't look out for a woman in a rowing boat. And I called my twin sister up just after it passed me by. I had a satellite phone on board and I was absolutely terrified. And it just struck me that I couldn't do this alone. Like if Andrew had been on board, one of us would have been on watch while the other one slept. And so I rang her up hysterically. And I remember her saying to me, you know, Deborah, you've just got to choose your attitude about this. And I remember thinking at the time, if you were here now, I would punch you so hard. But sorry, let me just move this. But I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said, these 3 words, choose your attitude. And I guess the reason that choose your attitude stuck was because nothing else out there I actually felt I had a choice about. I couldn't choose whether I got attacked by a shark or run over by a ship or blown backwards 30 miles after I'd just spent 3 days rowing that amount of miles. But I could always choose the attitude with which I bounced back from it. And so I ended up kind of clinging on to that as a hope. And I ended up writing it on the cabin hatch. On those blue arrows, you can just see it says choose your attitude, because that was what I faced as I rowed every day, every oar stroke. That's what I read. And I'd sit by it at breakfast time, and I turned it into a little kind of mindset tool, an exercise where I'd ask myself, right, come on, Deborah, choose your attitude. Which one is it going to be today? Although it'd have to be a positive one, because negative ones were kind of banned from the boat. And so, it wasn't always positive per se. Sometimes it was something like patience or enthusiastic. But it had to be positive in nature. And then the next thing I'd do is I'd make myself list out loud, well, what would be the benefits if you stuck to it? And I think, well, I guess if I was being enthusiastic, I might pull harder, and then I'll do more miles than I've done on any other day. And generally by the end of breakfast, I feel pretty enthusiastic, or whatever the one was I picked. And I've had to carry on doing that, because ultimately we have a choice, don't we? We have a choice in this lockdown, how we respond to the situation we find ourselves in. And that's particularly important when we feel completely out of control, which I think is a natural inclination to feel that at this current time. But there's also a lot of evidence that not only choosing the right attitude is crucial for our health and happiness, it has a massive impact on job success. When they researched people who'd had great job success and tried to drill down into what is it that's made them successful, amazingly, they found that only 25% of it could be attributed to their skill set, but a massive 75% of it was down to their attitude. And so what does that look like in practice? Well, for me, it's doing that choose your attitude exercise every morning. I've got a journal, I write it in every single day. I've even got choose your attitude engraved on my water bottle, so that every single sip, it's always on my desk, so that I'm always drinking, and then reminding myself, this is the thing that I've got control of. I get to choose how I respond to what's happening today and the challenges I'm facing. The other really big part of my journey out there was finding a whole load of attitude boosters, these positivity boosters, I like to call them, because the reality was it was a pretty dire situation to find myself in. And it's really hard not to make these kind of catastrophic fantasies. Do you ever do that, where like I would catch myself looking down at the black water when it's totally pitch black and the moon's not up in its cycle? I couldn't help but keep looking at the water and thinking, there's like 2 kilometers of dark water below me now, and the nearest help is 2 weeks away. And in those moments, I convinced myself something was about to come out of the dark water and eat me. And I caught myself at times doing the same about coronavirus. Will my aging in-laws catch it? Will I be able to deliver on this client project? Now I can't even get to client site, and I've got the kids to try and entertain at the same time. These catastrophic fantasies are the detriment of choosing their attitude. They're the thing that bring us down in our mindset, and then that becomes a spiraling mindset that actually is completely unproductive. And so for me, it's about establishing positivity boosters that become habitual. They're so part of my daily routine that they're just what I do, just like brushing my teeth. And so a lot of them I had to naturally do at sea anyway. But if we look at what the science tells us around how do we boost our levels of positivity, and it's crucial to do that, because what the science shows us now, what neuroscience studies have shown us, is that our brains at positive outperform our brains at negative, neutral, or stressed. And on every single metric, they enhance our ability to succeed. Things like our intelligence, our ability to focus on a project for longer, our ability to have more enthusiasm, our ability to be healthier because it reduces our stress levels and therefore has less of an impact on our body. And so having a positive attitude is not a nice to have. In my mind, this is business critical. And so these are all the ways that have been found to help. Having a gratitude practice, that's one of the things in my Choose Your Attitude journal. Just writing 3 things down a day, small things that you're positive, that have happened in the last 24 hours, that you're happy, that have made you feel positive. Because then it's like installing an app in your brain that spends the rest of the day scanning the world, trying to see the positives so that you've got something to write the next day. Using mindfulness, the Headspace app, just doing 10 minutes meditation a day, I found brilliant. Without that, exercise for me is the biggie. That makes all the difference. At sea, music was huge for me. Putting on songs that were attached to a memory so that you're instantly transported back to that kind of happy moment. Getting more sleep, journaling, acts of kindness. And of course, we've seen that even watching acts of kindness on TV at the moment that people are doing makes us feel more positive, doesn't it? Consciously choosing a positive attitude, walking in nature. And of course, I was surrounded by the most incredible nature at sea. And even humorous videos, showing a humorous video to your team at the start of a team meeting has been found to boost the positivity of a whole team. And so scientifically, we know that there are a number of things we can do, and inherently we know these things are good, don't we? We probably have all tried one or many of them a number of times. The challenge, therefore, is how do we make them stick? And I think that habitualizing is the key to this. It's really where the focus needs to be. For me, habit stacking has been what has allowed me to get a lot of these put into place on a regular basis. And habit stacking is, if you think about it, we've all got a number of habits that are actually very well ingrained. We all probably brush our teeth twice a day. We probably are, habitually make a cup of coffee in the morning, or we open our emails in the morning. We have habits that are very established. When we stack a habit that we want to embed on top of one that's already established, it's much more likely to stick. And so for me, putting my gym kit by my bed after I brush my teeth every evening, so that when I step out of bed in the morning, it means I've got to stand on my kit. That has exponentially meant that I'm more likely to get up and exercise before the kids get up in the morning. And I need to do that. For me, that's absolutely crucial because it has the biggest impact on my levels of energy and my positivity. And I manage a team of people, and that's really important to me that I show up in front of them with the right mindset. I was reading this research study by Gallup, and they found that this is true, that happier leaders at work earn more respect and people are more motivated to follow their vision. I need people to follow my vision now more than ever, I think, during this time. And so, like choosing my attitude each day, finding these positivity boosters that become habit is business critical. And so as you continue your time on lockdown, my hope is that you will find the ways that work for you. And maybe one of those two might be something that you can make stick. Either choosing your attitude each morning and doing it as a routine, having a trigger that reminds you to do it, whether that's a journal or doing it when you're looking in the mirror, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. And then finding the positivity boosters and habit stacking, something that reminds you to do it every day so that it sticks. Back to you, Daisy.
Deborah, I'm sure that many, many people will have found in that short amount of time, lots of things. Certainly I was writing notes thinking, all right, I'm going to really do this. Deborah, thank you so much.